All right, welcome everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. This is Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press and Scott the Flute Billick from the Winnipeg Sun and Post
I gotta
Media.
get rid of it.
And
I love
holy
it, man.
smokes, what a game that was, guys! I'm not sure what I saw there. Honestly, I'll get into it later and what I saw, but let's just start off and dive right into it. Jeff, what did we just witness here?
So I had this big list of things going on, right? So it's 4-1, right, for Edmonton. I have this list of notes from the periods. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, both goals, power play goals. We're talking about discipline issues here. You can't put them on the power play. I did note that I like the physicality from Stanley as he rode that line of physicality after the whistle with Puljujarvi, but that's beside the point. I started talking about Scheifele versus McDavid, and I was going to lament about Scheifele not back-checking on McDavid enough for that opportunity here. He didn't score, but whatever, blah, blah, blah. Dubois looks like a passenger, too many passengers. Anyways, all these points are kind of irrelevant.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, this is positive. The Jets are responding. And you know what? I tweeted it kind of later in the game. And this is what I meant by that last tweet was this is the Jets game. They were down and out, stayed in the fight, found ways to score points and rallied. And you know what? It was the answer from even, Blake Wheeler in that line. You were starting to question like, okay, like it's cool that the Jets are up 2 games, but after they start going up 2-0 and then 4-1, it's like, okay, where's the top line scoring points? And then sure enough, boom. You have obviously the power play goal from Pro, which was massive. Massive. Yeah. And then you have the back-to-back goals, Blake Wheeler and Morrissey 16 seconds apart. Like you saw the Oilers, you saw them disintegrating after that Wheeler goal. Like I don't know how many of you guys saw the water bottle in the face of Mike Smith, but I looked at that and was like, this guy's rattled. Like Edmonton doesn't believe. So as far as the notes
head at one point,
we can go through the negatives and we can go through some of the stuff that's challenging, but the Jets are up 3-0. And my comments from prior to this series to now are not opposite. The Jets have responded and the Jets are here and they're 1 game away from punching their ticket in to the second round. So anyway, that's it.
Scotty, what do you got?
Yeah, to me, it all just stems from the Josh Archibald hit. Like, the Jets, they just weren't playing a very good game up until that hit, right? And then just something like that. It's funny with this team because it always seems like there's something that kind of kicks it off for them, whether it's a bad hit against them or just like being able to score 1 goal. Like what they do is they just like if they can get 1. We've seen this show. This isn't the first time we've seen the Jets come back from a 3-1 deficit or a 3-goal deficit. Sorry. And then, just that hit. First of all, it happens against like perhaps one of your best defensemen in this series so far. I think Logan Stanley's been huge for this team. He's also huge, and he's a young guy. He's still a rookie, right? And so you have this little guy going after him. Nothing happens out of it, but you see kind of that guy down on the ice. And then and then the Matthew Perreault. I think the biggest thing that helped the Jets in that was the fact that they went on the power play at the exact time that Mark Scheifele's line had played, a lengthy shift, right?
Totally, man.
And I think, because we saw it in the first power play of the game before that one, it was, Mark Scheifele's line playing a minute 45, doing absolutely nothing but playing keep away on the perimeter. And then 15 seconds. And during that 15 seconds, the Jets actually get a chance, to score the goal with their second power play unit. Then Maurice's hands sort of forced, right? You're not going to put out your tired guys. Put Ehlers back out there. I thought that it was a dynamic power play. The guys were moving around. You saw Pierre-Luc Dubois get a 1-timer on that power play before the goal. Like it looked better. And then, from there, it was just, Perreault gets the goal and the Jets do what they do. That's, it's so interesting, right? The whole game changes on its head in 183 seconds. And 2 of those goals come in 16 seconds. And like Jeff said, I have a running list too. It seems we both do this of just little talking points. And I've done it even more so now coming onto the show. And it's just like, man, it's like most people's game stories tonight. You just had to, it went onto the cutting room floor because you couldn't the whole game changed. The whole narrative of the game changed. Everything. The series is now, there's only been 4 teams ever to come back from 3-0 down. I mean, 2 of them happened in the last 12 years or whatever, but it just doesn't happen, right? I mean, you're witnessing something, and this is the first time ever that a Jets team in the NHL has, and I'm not counting the WHA days, but the team that the Jets have ever led 3-0. There's an opportunity tomorrow night for the Jets to make history, and it's sweeping a series. All these storylines have just changed. You've gone from a 2-1 series where the Jets suffer I wouldn't say humiliating defeat, but not a very good defeat. Now to the fact the Jets are going to, they could make history tomorrow night. It's crazy.
What did Maurice say? He said the team that wins this game is going to be the one that's happy to play the next day. So here we are, right?
That's the other thing, right? Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there was a lot of not good stuff in this game prior to the Archibald hit that we could talk about, but I don't know, because everybody's just happy. It's hilarious. And I don't know, if Jeff wasn't at the game tonight. I don't know if Sean saw it when you're walking in. I mean, there's not a lot to be happy about right now in this province. But to see, and you couldn't have the fans out in the streets like you did, a few years ago when they were in the playoffs. Obviously, everybody remembers the whiteout outside on Donald, right, and the Pans. But you saw these fans just in cars going around honking. It was pretty loud. And in unison, they're doing this kind of like the "Go Jets Go" chant with their horn. I mean, you couldn't hear audible people saying "Go Jets Go," but you could hear the beep, beep, beep. It was a cool atmosphere, and I think this is given in a really bad time right now in terms of this pandemic. This has given people a lot to be happy about, and it's hard not to be happy for the fans and that who've suffered a lot during all this. So
Sean, let's get into Nick Ehlers. Let's not wait. I see the comments, I see the stuff. Why are we waiting? Let's get into it.
Hold on.
I see the comments.
What do you want to talk about?
We went through both these 2 sizable rants. We went through these 2 sizable rants, and not one of us really gave the respect to Nick Ehlers that he deserves. And I feel like the topic we get to right now is his return to the lineup, his impact to the lineup. And just how difficult it is to miss 9 games in the regular season with a shoulder injury, and then miss 2 games in the playoffs. I know I'm stealing your job. So I'm going to take the host job. I'm going to take the host job. Sean, what do you think of Nick Ehlers' game? Because you got really, really good insight. So you tell me what you think of Nick Ehlers' game.
I think Scott's wrong. I think Paul Maurice was going to go with that secondary power play unit regardless, whether or not.
I agree with that. I agree with that too. But it did work out. I agree with you on that.
Do you want my insight or not, Jeff? You gotta. If you're going to host this, you got to start scaling it back.
It's a new role. It's a new role. Okay, I'll lay back. Okay, I'll pretend yeah, you're right. You're just saying so many really good things.
Start pretending any moment. You could start pretending any moment, so we can move on with the show.
You're right.
Here's what I thought. As soon as Archibald does that play, I'm blown away that he does that. It was needless. It was stupid. To me, I see on one side of the ice one team that's committed to doing all the right things to compete in this series, and on the other side, a team where a chunk of them just don't get it. I mean, how deflating is it that you go out with the effort that the Edmonton Oilers had? I don't necessarily think that the Jets were playing bad. That was looking to me similar to what games between the Jets and Oilers looked like earlier in the year. And then Archibald goes and does that. And to me, as soon as that penalty happens, and I don't know, I think I turned to Kenny and I said at that point in the game, this is trouble for the Oilers, because what was the one thing that had looked really, really good for the Jets before that in that game? It was that secondary power play unit. They looked phenomenal. And so you went out with how much time left in the game? About 8 minutes left in the game, and you gave them a freebie that is a motivated freebie, because now you're pissed off because a guy took a cheap shot at one of your guys, and you gave them a freebie to go get back in that game and handed it over to the one part of the Jets game that had been on fire earlier and showed that it could break that game open. They go and they do that. Now they've got all the momentum. Everything gets turned around. Nick Ehlers, I mean, I think that second goal that Pro scores, if you notice how much attention they're paying to Nick Ehlers, who is back on the blue line at that point and throws it over, and then they start kind of collapsing in on the net to score there. The reason why they're able to get to the front and have as many whacks as they have is because the box is spread out because Nick Ehlers is on the ice. They're terrified of the guy. They're terrified of that shot, and clearly we see in the overtime the reason why they should be. You know what? It's a totally different thing, but I got thinking, remember what it was like to see Patrick Laine release that slap shot of his and it go off the post and go in, and you just think, holy smokes, like, how do you stop that thing? Nick Ehlers' wrist shot, I think it was Pro in the post game, had said, no one talks enough about Nick Ehlers' shot. He's 100% right about that. Nick Ehlers' shot, his wrist shot, has to me that feel of the Patrick Laine slap shot, that almost inevitability that if you give it to him wide open, he's going to put it in. And the amount of times it goes off the bar and in has that sound is just absolutely unbelievable. You're right, Jeff. Him coming back off that injury, we hadn't seen him shooting that much. I wasn't surprised that he was going to be fast, that he was going to be burning around the ice. We expected that because he's been working out and he's been skating a lot. What he hasn't been doing is shooting very much. I don't think we've seen him take a slap shot yet, and he's got a great slap shot too. We've seen him shooting the puck, but we haven't seen him shoot like that. And it's funny because Paul Maurice before the game had kind of talked about, well, Nick Ehlers coming into the lineup. I don't know that if he gives you that much extra, but he's got that shot. That gives you something extra. Well, holy smokes, it gave them something extra tonight. I've said it in this space. I think you guys have been on shows where I've said it before. I think that Nick Ehlers, and I've said it, so don't anyone think that I'm just hopping on this bandwagon. I've said I think Nick Ehlers is the Jets' MVP so far this year, and this is the reason for it. It's the moments like this. It's the lightheartedness he approaches the game with. It's the way they talk about the bench being better. It's the celebration you see after that game and how happy people are on that team and how every guy wants to get right in his face to make eye contact and celebrate with him. Nick Ehlers is the heart and soul of this team, and we saw that come out in this game here tonight.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, I don't, yeah. You want to go back to hosting now, Sean?
Well, I don't know. I thought Jeff took over. See, Jeff, now when I stop talking, if you're going to host, you got to jump on. You got to ask a question.
No, I was
interrupted the show. You're fired. You lose your duties. Moving back. Let's move it back here. Let's get to Archibald.
I don't
Jeff. Well, no, you go. You get the first crack at this here, Jeff. Archibald, that play. What did you see when you saw that?
I saw a guy who made an absolutely ridiculous decision. I mean, and the thing about it is there's no doubt what he was trying to do, right? I mean, he went down and crouched down, and I mean, and I think it spoke to your earlier point and about Logan Stanley. Maybe it's his size, maybe it's the fact he's new to the NHL and doesn't have that respect. As you mentioned, Archibald's 28 years old. So he probably saw a guy like Logan Stanley who frustrated him because he can't do anything to him physically because he's a large man and he's shown that he'll punch you back in the face if you punch him in the face. That's an intimidating thing. So what do is you try to line him up. Maybe there's a miscommunication in his own brain about trying to go for a hip check versus but no, he goes down and he goes
low and he went lower 100%. And lower.
All I'm saying is lower. Like once you commit to that, it is where it is. That to me was just a pivotal point. That I don't know if that speaks to him as a player or the Oilers as a team, but I mean, at some point, I mean, that like McDavid and Draisaitl are your ticket. You need them to be 5-on-5 or power play to win this game. Yep. And you go out of your way up. Like you can't be that confident and you go out of your way up to do something like that. And it ultimately becomes the pivotal moment in the game, the TSN turning point, if you will. And so to me, I look at that and I go, I mean, if they don't score on the ensuing power play, it's probably a moot point, and we're not talking about it as much, but they do, and it becomes this rolling snowball into what becomes a massive comeback for the Jets. So I mean that will in the room, I'd be interested to see how many guys are happy with their teammates' actions. That is a selfish move. It doesn't get any more selfish, and the worst part is when you have to watch the tape the next day, there really is no excuse for what you did. So yeah.
And
Scotty,
I think,
hold on, Scotty. Let me tee it up in a question here.
Sure,
The Jets tried to downplay that for the most part until you got Mr. Truth Serum, Matty Perreault, who told us exactly what they were thinking. But why do you think the Jets were trying to downplay how angry they would have been at that Archibald play, and how that was, how they kind of wanted to stay away from the fact that what we see is that was clearly the turning point in this game?
I think they believe in the fact that they would come back anyways, right? I get what you're saying, right? I don't think they're downplaying it any more than, other than Matthew Perreault. I mean, I just don't think they view it as something that would. I don't know. That's a good question. I honestly, it's a good question. I'm not sure why they downplay. I just think it's kind of a moot point at this point, right? Like it'd be one thing to sit there and say like, hey, this was great or whatever. But I mean, I don't think they want to give him any more credit anyways than what they did. So we're not wearing white. You're right.
Well, we're not fans. There's your explanation. We've got a job to do. We're professionals. I mean, we respect the fans, but we're not here to put the white out, and we don't carry pom-poms. We got a job to do here. We're going to do that, but we're not here to wear white and be part of the whiteout.
And I think there was a concerted effort. If you listen to Blake, even, right, like how big was that comeback? His first comment was, it doesn't really matter, right? Like we got to win the next one, right? The way that Blake has talked, even the way that Josh talked after the game, like it's very much like it's just one game, it's over now, and they need to go and win the next one, right? Because none of it matters if they can't win that fourth game. And they always say, it's always said that the hardest one is to win is the fourth one. So, I mean, I think it's kind of funny that you almost feel bad for Archibald that he's got a hearing tomorrow, because like the damage has already been done. Like he's not going to feel any worse if he gets suspended for a game or fined $5,000, because it's, the worst possible scenario for his penalty, was what happened, right? Getting scored on, igniting something under the Jets to get them going. Leon Draisaitl said it after the game. I was just reading one of the comments that he made, and it was like, we need to get a kill there. And I think that is part of it too, right? Like their penalty kill has been pretty good this season, and they just, I don't know. Like, I mean, you still have a chance, even though as bad as that penalty was. I'm not saying I said I almost feel bad for the guy. I didn't say I do feel bad for the guy. I think part of it is like, I don't know. You guys are. You took me right off my game. I mean, these comments. This guy.
They're killing you.
Man, the comment section's getting to you. You playoff ready, man.
I know.
Embrace these guys. They're done, man. You got to tally it. X.
Take them out.
Yeah.
Take them out.
You rattled the
take them out. I can take them out of the chat right now. You failed, Scott. Guys, I don't think.
That's the power you guys have.
I just think they need to get a kill there, and I don't think the Archibald penalty should have been as big as it needed to be. Like it's a bad penalty, right? But like, should that deflate a team that bad? Like, I don't know. Like, if you're as
hold
good
on a
as
second.
you think you are as the Oilers, does that deflate you?
Here's what I'm going to say. This is why that play is terrible on so many levels. One, because it's a cheap shot. You can see when you show the replay, he goes down further, and at some point just makes it clear that he's trying to drill his shoulder into his knee.
The answer is, Sean, there's no off-ice game. There's no off-ice games. There's no point in commenting on that penalty. What's the benefit? Of course, we would love the answer. Of course, we love Matty Perreault's answer. I mean, he's given us the truth serum. He's saying it's a cheap shot. He's willing to go back to that. We know a lot of these guys on this team are not going to go there, right? They're not going to.
Well, they're not going to go. They don't need to go there,
right?
They don't
need any bulletin board info.
Right.
Well, I don't think there's a threat of bulletin board information in there. I don't.
You see,
hold on, Scott. Hold on, guys. Let me finish my point here. I think the reason they don't go there is because they don't want to give the impression that the win was something that was handed to them, that was not fully in their control. As we bring in Ken here, and Ken will jump in on this. What's around your shoulders there, Ken?
That is.
Oh, I got the hot. It's so cold in here. I got the hoodie underneath the suit here for the boys at Apparel. I'm gonna have to. Okay, fine. Never mind. I'm gonna.
You're starting a new trend.
He's leaving. He's leaving.
Right.
He's leaving.
Hey,
Kenny recognized immediately.
Let me get back to the Archibald thing. It's bad not only because it's dirty, but it's terrible because what it is that he opened the door for a team to get back into a game that they had in hand in a series.
100%.
They were down 2-0. Like they needed that game.
Yeah.
There was no room for error in that game. There's no room for taking it lightly. And so here's the deal. That is a shattering penalty for the Edmonton Oilers, not only because the Oilers end up losing that game, but if you are players like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the guys who went out and did what they needed to do to win that game tonight and said, we did our part to get this series back in somewhat under our control, not under our control, but at least fight our way back into this series. How can you have faith in your teammates if your teammates do that kind of stuff? How can you as a team operate with faith in each other and look at each other down the bench and say, I've got your back when a guy's going and making a play like that? That is so selfish and that it costs you a game in a series, a game that you needed to have. I don't know how you recover from that. I think that has broken the kinship with that team. Did you see how those guys looked after the game?
But isn't that
after that
isn't
goal?
that a sign of fragility already?
That has nothing to do with fragility. You know what makes you fragile? Is
if you can't rally behind a bad penalty, you're already defeated.
What's that?
If you can't rally behind a bad penalty when you're up 4-1, you're already defeated.
Yeah, Sean, I feel like you're making it a bit more dramatic than it is.
No,
I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't a turning point.
They lost the game.
I get it, but I'm saying you're suggesting the Edmonton Oilers saw that penalty as like the end of the game. First of all, it was 4-1 when the penalty happened. It was 4-2 after the goal. So
did you guys check out Connor McDavid's post game?
I've seen some of the comments.
When he's asked
I've
what
seen
happened,
some of the quotes.
When he's asked what happened, he says, "Well, a lot of things went wrong.
Sean, if you're right, Sean, if you're right, then yeah. Then I mean, I think fragile. I think is a
Jeff. You've played hockey before. When you're on a team where you're working against your own teammates, what kind of confidence level do you have? The Jets don't have to worry about working against their own teammates. Sean, everyone is pulling on the rope. That is as clear an indication of a guy who is not pulling on the rope.
No, I think it's an example of a guy not pulling. That's an example of a guy not pulling on the rope. It's an example of a guy not pulling on the rope. I agree with you, man. But I'm just saying to you, like, you're telling me that you had a teammate who took a bad penalty, and then you got down in the dumps, and then you dumped on him, and then you dumped on your team, and then you fell apart. Like, I'm not sure that I'm agreeing with you. I would say that you get that guy, you talk to him, you tell him he owes you a goal. And then you rally and you play. It's 4-2, man. They scored 2 goals.
Situational awareness, guys.
I'm not disagreeing with you on the negativity. I'm talking about the response.
Playoff hockey.
100%.
Playoff hockey.
Yes,
that's not the argument. That's not the argument.
But if this team
it is the argument,
Sean. But if this team can't respond to a bad penalty, it's over already. Because you can't. If you're up 4-1,
that's not a bad penalty.
It's a horrible penalty. What are you talking about?
That's what I'm saying. A bad
It's about the decision, not the penalty.
Exactly.
Right, but if one guy gives
the decision says I don't care about the team. The decision says I make a selfish play.
That might be true.
And I'm not with you. I don't have your back. I've got my own back. I'm not situationally aware of what's going on here. It's not a bad penalty is flipping the puck over the boards or getting your stick up too high or hooking a guy or something like that. That's a selfish penalty that says I don't have your back. That says not everyone on this team is pulling in the same direction.
I think we're all right. I think we're just all arguing different points now. I feel like we're all circling around the wagon here, saying all the points that we all agree with. And then we're claiming that we disagree with each other's opinions, even though we're not apparently listening to each other's opinions. So I think we're all right.
Let's move on here. We got lots of stuff to talk about.
Well, let's get into the power play 2, Ken. What do you think the power play 2 did so well tonight that they looked just unstoppable?
Well, I mean, the puck movement and the motion, right? That's the one thing that's been missing from the Jets' top unit lately. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that the second unit probably wasn't thrilled about getting 15 seconds on the first power play attempt, and then they went out and did something about it. So we know that they have kept a simplistic approach throughout the entire season. Sean, you mentioned it before. That second unit missed Nikolai Ehlers immensely when he was gone. Yes, they're still able to get traffic and move the puck to a degree, but they miss that motion that he creates. His ability to reload on that left point is so exceptional, and he did an excellent job of getting Pierre-Luc Dubois involved today. Several big one-timers. I think, Sean, I might have overheard you talking about it when I was trying to file, but Dubois was involved with his shot. The Jets got to the net, nice screens, Perreault causing some havoc, and one other thing that Perreault did that will not end up on the game sheet. On the goal where Smith had his stick knocked out of his hands by a Pierre-Luc Dubois one-timer, there are two subtle plays pointed out by Freddie, TSN cameraman, Mislawchuk. Perreault kicks the stick away subtly on two different occasions. When there's contact for sure. I'd like to go back and watch the video. I don't know if Jeff, did you see it from home at all, or did they show any replays of it? But it looks like there was a little bit of creativity in front of the net. Perreault is a master of screening, getting everything out of his size in front, but apparently he should have gotten an assist for his ability to keep the stick from getting back into the hands of Mike Smith. I think that was on that first power play goal by Ehlers.
Kenny, we know you watched 4 or 5 replays after that. Don't tell us you don't have a complete dissection of that goal. You're right. I mean, I think he does. I thought Matty Perreault has just continued to be that guy that, he epitomizes playoff hockey, and he's a guy who earlier this year was a waiver wire move for money, I guess, but probably with the small hope that somebody would snatch him up there if they wanted him, and now here he is playing such a role. I mean, that to me, I know this isn't the topic, but just his role in what we've seen not just this game, but these last 3 games, and the movement from line to line to line, for him has just been, exactly what the Jets need.
Yeah. I don't know if you want me to say anything more, but he's the pest. He's the pest that this team needs in the playoffs, right? Like, every guy needs a guy that kind of agitates, and he's the one that does it. But he does it, like, Matthew Perreault is so skilled at that job that he can just walk the knife's edge, and he never really falls over, right? Like, onto the wrong side of it. Like, it's like watching Dylan DeMello, do the little bit of interference, and every time when a guy drops a puck past him. Like, if you watch Dylan DeMello's game, he's a master at doing that. He's just so good at it. And I think Matty P is just a master at being a pest, but not in the way that, where it gets like he makes sure that the guy knows he's there, but he never really, very often at least, goes across the line.
Guys, one thing that I thought may have helped turn the tide for the Jets was the matchup that they had earlier in the game, where they were basically taking and matching strength on strength. Lowry got a chunk, or they gave the Lowry line that nuclear option assignment towards the end of the game. I thought they really, really kind of turned things around in that moment. Ken, what did you see when they put Lowry on that on Draisaitl and McDavid?
Yeah, a couple of really important things there, and Scott and I were talking about this up in the press box. Mason Appleton really seemed to embrace the role. I mean, all 3 of them embraced the role, but Appleton seemed to be doing an excellent job along the wall. Andrew Kopp created a couple of great opportunities. One on that rebound looked like he might end it, but Adam Lowry's just been so good in this series so far. He did an excellent job against those guys, and it also freed up the top line. They created and generated a little bit more offense as the game wore on as well, after their load was lightened, if you will, by Lowry's line taking that matchup on. Sean, we talked about it in the pregame show about how there would be a share or a split of that task, and ultimately that helped the Jets as it moved on. But I really thought Mason Appleton got his energy level going, and I mean, we also saw at one point Perreault took a turn with that shift, or with that group as well, which he's also really succeeded well with this year.
Why do you think it took so long to go in that direction? Because I found it strange. It seemed like we were expecting that at the beginning of the game, Ken. We were talking about the potential for Lowry to go there, but it seemed like they were going strength on strength for the most part. Because, I mean, the other part about that I think is fascinating is how it seemed to open things up for the top line. Like, they had looked like they were struggling with that Oilers top line all game. And then all of a sudden, they really poured it on towards the end. I'm wondering how much of what we saw towards the end there, and I know I'm giving a lot of credit to, that penalty that's taken and the kind of the tide it turned, the way that I don't think the Oilers really responded well. But how much of the Oilers not responding well had to do with the fact that Paul Maurice started getting the matchups that he really wanted? Jeff, I'll let you start with that one.
Well, I thought, Scheifele's line was up against them early in the game, right? So there was, or at least there was some matchups there early on. Lowry obviously took over, at least for the most part in the game, and certainly into overtime. I feel like at a certain point, early on particularly, I felt there was some good pressure. I felt like Scheifele's line, and this would have been early in the first, I felt like they were matching pretty well. They were getting some opportunity. I also thought there was some opportunity, as I mentioned early in the show when we were talking about the top, and or my list of things, and McDavid beating Scheifele on that play, Scheifele kind of being out to lunch there, right? And then Lowry kind of took over. To me, that line needs, if you have the luxury of having that line be able to shut them down, and they do with Dubois particularly there. I'm not saying Perreault isn't a good piece of that puzzle, but we do know with Kopp there, it's an added piece. And so I do like that. I do like that matchup, obviously, so long as they can handle it. Clearly they can. But until Wheeler scored that goal, I still think the question was, well, where is this matchup? Where is this?
Yeah.
Even some, you look at some of the Oilers lines, the Oilers were not hiding their talent on their top line. They put Draisaitl and McDavid together. When you have what's his name? Who's the center in the second line for them?
Jujhar Khaira?
No. It's what's his name? I'm drawing a blank here, but it's Cassian and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Ryan. Is it Ryan something, or I don't know why I'm losing.
Well, Jujhar Khaira seemed to end up with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins towards the end of the game.
Towards the end with Cassian, but I'm saying anyway. McLeod, thank you very much, Christy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Yeah, you had him, and you're thinking that exactly the fact that I'm battling to get this name. You start seeing the Lowry matchup line with them, and you're wondering, well, where's the rest of the group? And you start thinking to yourself, okay, the Dubois, Stastny line and Ehlers line should be dominating their matchup, and then you start thinking, what about the Wheeler, Scheifele, and Connor line? They're playing against those guys. So until Wheeler scored that goal, that was the question to me. I felt like the matchup was there. I do think McDavid was getting out there with Scheifele and Scheifele's line there for a while, but when they were with Lowry, that matchup wasn't happening until you saw 2 goals in 16 seconds in the third period. So it wasn't working until it was working.
Well, but those were the tweaks that were made at that point. That's where we're getting at. Have we seen, basically, as long as the Jets have control of it, have we seen the last of a majority of strength on strength in this series, Scotty?
Yeah, maybe, right? Because I don't know. I just think that at some point you got to unleash that line, the Scheifele line. And you can do that right now because you're at home. And I didn't think that Mark Scheifele had a good game. I might get some heck in the chat here, but I thought he was kind of a little lazy is a word that I shouldn't use, but a little kind of lackadaisical on the back check there on the Cassian goal. Forbert's kind of getting all screwed up a little bit in front of that. Derek Forbert didn't have his best game either. But I don't know. I just think the Jets they played better when they were just, I don't know, they just had something going there after that after the Perreault goal, and it didn't matter who they're playing against, and I wonder, I don't know where it is. I'm kind of where was it before that? And I don't know. I don't think that Scheifele has been particularly good. I think Blake Wheeler has been driving that line quite a bit. I didn't really think that Kyle Connor had that great of a game either. And I think Blake Wheeler's the one that's kind of driving the bus on the top line. And no offense to Blake Wheeler, but it's got to be the other two too. They're younger, and that is what it is. But I don't know. It's the matchup, the strength versus strength thing. I think the Jets found tonight that they don't need. Well, I shouldn't say that, because the reason why they got down, a couple of power play goals too, but I think the Jets need to start playing to their own strengths too, and some of it is kind of leaving it. It seems like the Jets have lines now that they can do, and if the Edmonton's just going for the nuclear option, if that's all they're going to do, I mean, you can put out Adam Lowry's line against that all night long. And I think those guys, I thought they thrived on that tonight. And like Kenny said earlier, Mason Appleton was tremendous tonight. I mean, there was a missed tackle on the one thing.
What a brutal miss! That was a terrible non-call.
That should have been but I mean, that's the thing. Like, Mason Appleton was running through everybody tonight. He was all over people. I thought it was his best game so far of the playoffs. And then Adam Lowry. Like, I think you can unlock the Wheeler and the Scheifele and then the Connor line a little bit more now at home. This is the first home game, and I think you saw that a little bit. It'll be interesting to see, though, tomorrow night. Like, I mean, the Jets have all the momentum now, and I think they should just go. Like, just go for it. See what you can do. You're up 3-1. I mean, I would like to see them play, a different style of game tomorrow. But at the same time, the style of the game that won in the first two games, it was effective, but they just weren't scoring enough goals. And I think tonight, after the power play, you kind of saw that go. And Nikolai Ehlers, again, kind of brought a whole new element to this game, too. And so, and we should also talk about Josh Morrissey at some point. He's been tremendous in this series, just absolutely night and day from his regular season.
We will. Ken, Scott says the Jets have to get to their identity. Was that what we saw at the end of the game there? Was that the Jets getting to their identity?
Yeah, I mean, this is the one thing that we all know. We knew the Oilers would be providing a push. That's what we saw today. They took it to the Jets. Yeah. They should. They're a team that was down 2-0. They're a team that had their best two players, and two of the best players in the NHL had 0 points in the first two games. So we expected that push to come. Did the Jets have a good enough pushback? It took them a while to get there. There's no doubt about that. I think they were a little bit tentative. I mean, Paul Maurice basically laid out what he expected the game to look like. He warned his team about sitting on that and protecting the 2-0 series lead, especially with the back-to-back scenario up ahead. So the biggest thing for me, guys, the Jets didn't stray from their identity after falling behind 4-1. It would have been easy for them to try to open it up and raise their risk profile. Instead, yes, the Oilers opened the door with the penalty, but they didn't get away from what they were doing, and they didn't cheat for offense, even though they were down in that game. So you talked about the goal. I don't mean to change gears, but Forbert definitely got spun around. That there was not good spacing or good gap control between he and Neil Pionk, but it's very easy for us when Connor McDavid is coming at you 100 miles an hour. It's easy to say, well, he just should have widened out and taken the wide guy in Zach Kassian. Well, if McDavid doesn't cut out instead of cutting in, now we're all saying, well, why didn't Forbert take McDavid? The problem is that by the time he turned and pivoted away, it was too late for him to recover to get the wide guy. And the one thing on I don't think that Scheifele was in a chase position to begin with. I don't think necessarily he was coasting, but could he catch Zach Kassian in a perfect world? Yes, but
he's got to catch him, doesn't he?
Right, but he's at the end of it. Sorry, one other quick thing. He's at the end of a 1:04 long shift. It's hard to catch a guy when you're in a chase position and you are up in the offensive zone. I'm not taking him off the hook. In a perfect world, I think Scheifele looks back and says, man, I should have taken one more hard stride. But I don't think this was a full-on lazy, I'm not going to bother back-checking scenario. But I think, again, he's got to make that play if he can. But I don't think it was, as lazy.
I just don't think
it looks like a lazy play in slow motion. But this is real time, guys, that we're dealing with here.
Well, hold on. Kassian started that shift at the same time as Scheifele did. They're both on the ice for the same amount of time. Mark Scheifele is the guy that Paul Maurice says, back in the day when Brandon Tanev was here. Brandon Tanev is not the fastest guy on this team. Nick Ehlers isn't the fastest guy on this team. Okay. Mark Scheifele is the fastest guy on this team. That's what we've been told by the coach. So if you're on this ice for the same amount of time as Zach Kassian, and you're faster than Nick Ehlers, I would think you should be able to catch him in that situation.
Well, he's not the fastest guy on the ice at 104 of his shift, Sean, is my point there.
Kassian was at 104. They both started at the same time.
Sure.
Well, I'm just saying.
Let's ask him.
They're both in the same
tomorrow. Maybe we'll give him tomorrow.
We're saying the same thing. I'm saying he's in a chase position. It's tough to catch a guy when you've been on the ice for a minute. You're not at your premier wind span to
catch.
Well,
then you got to get off though, right? Because this is one of the things.
Well, you can't get off when the team's on a 2-on-1 rush. You're trying to chase the guy down.
The rest of the line got off.
Right.
I mean, so he was on 15 or maybe even 20 seconds longer than everybody else. So this is one of those scenarios, right? The reason why Mark Scheifele got benched for the one game that he got is because he was playing way too long, gliding all over the place. And so, yeah, like I think, I don't know. I don't think that we need to be letting Mark Scheifele off the hook, because this is the guy that wants to be in this conversation. And you can't be getting beat by Zach Kassian if you want to be compared to to Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews. And maybe we should just get away from this altogether. But Mark puts him in that conversation himself, so he needs to play like it then. That's all.
But the whole play happens after the block. It's a turn of possession. Pionk's shot is blocked. All of a sudden, now you're in a chase position trying to get up the ice, right? That's how the whole thing starts.
They didn't view him as an elite two-way center, Kenny. So if that's the way he is, then he's got to get back and play that defensive game. We saw better back checks from Andrew Kopp tonight. We saw better back checks from Mason Appleton. This is your top-line center who wants to, he's got to be making those plays. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to crap on Scheifele here. I just don't think he's announced himself in this series yet. That's all.
Oh, he's got another level to reach. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
You know what I found was interesting is after that game we were asked about, or Paul Maurice was asked about, coming back, what can you take forward from that? And he'd said, coming back in a game like that, you earn a level of confidence that's going to make you dangerous should you fall behind in games going forward. I'm wondering, and Paul Maurice didn't seem like he wanted to go there. It was one of those ones where either he didn't understand the way I framed the question or he didn't want to answer that question. But I wonder if you can link what we saw here tonight to what we saw from the Jets earlier in the season when they were, the whole idea with them was stay in the fight. They loved using that idea in the games where they fell behind and would score their way back into games. Do you think, Jeff, that they earned confidence in their ability to come back in games way back when that served them here tonight?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know if there's a direct connection. I don't know if you can look at earlier results in the season, although they would look somewhat similar in the sense that the Jets got behind and climbed their way back. I think tonight's game, because of the circumstances, because it was a playoff game, because, as Kenny was mentioning, of course the Edmonton Oilers are going to come out hot out of the gates. They're the team that's down 2 games, and it was the Jets' responsibility, essentially, to match that desperation. Like, that was always going to be the case. Like, there was no, home ice advantage. Yes, you got to sleep in your own bed and all the other characteristics that come with being at home, but there was not this emotional comeback to Winnipeg where the fans were going to take over and help out the Jets. It was always going to be what happened on the ice. So to me, yes, can you look at what happened earlier in the season and compare it to tonight? Sure, in a sense, only by result, I would say. In this case, I think they were getting punched in the mouth. They were down 4-1 at home, knowing they were up 2-0, and that was essentially what led to their desperation, being like, now we are desperate. We're down 3 goals, and we need to fight back in our own barn because we're playing tomorrow night too. Now, whether or not all of that was taken into consideration, I doubt it. But I'm saying that I think that tonight's game was okay, we weren't matching their intensity. Now we're getting hit in the mouth. Why aren't we? To coming back. And this is, they know they have the firepower. Maurice mentioned it. When you have a team that is behind, you lose some of that fear or worried about protecting whatever it may be. And you play a little bit more relaxed, if you will, or fluid. And that's what I think we saw with the Jets tonight was in the third period when you kind of have nothing to lose when you're down, you stop worrying about the defensive side of the game and you start switching over to the offensive side of the game. And I think that's where the Jets excel. That's where we've been saying that this is their bread and butter. This is where they're, deadly when they're desperate, pushing offensively minded. And that's what I would say would be very, very much similar to earlier in the season because of the situation and the fact that they were down a few goals and defense was kind of thrown by the wayside.
Scotty, how much different do you feel about this team with what they've shown you over the past 3 games compared to how you felt about them heading into the playoffs?
Well, I mean, the fact that my 4-2 prediction is for the Oilers is just gone now. I do. I mean, I think, so first of all, I think the first, game 1 showed me and I think showed all of us that like these guys could. I think game one kind of showed us that the Jets can play a defensive game. They can kind of buckle down. They can shut down a top line, and they can be disciplined. I think game two showed that this team. What everybody knows about this team is that they can. Well, one, I think they played a better game in game two, and they also rode Connor Hellebuyck quite a bit. And then I think tonight they just showed that they can run and gun with the best two players in the world, and beat them, right? Like so, I think they've just shown that. They've leaned on experience, right? I mean, this team over the last 2 years, and last year, and the team's pretty much the same for the most part. They have some depth pieces, but for the most part, this team has become well accustomed to coming back in games, has become well accustomed to being down in games, and not feeling like they're out of it. I mean, I think almost every player tonight in the post game mentioned, they're kind of battle hardened that way. So. Have they showed me anything new? I think they showed that I think the top line, what the top line showed in game one, is that they can actually do what Paul Maurice has asked them to do, even in game two. I think tonight though, you kind of had to change it. I mean, there was nothing for this team to lose at this point. I mean, other than the game, but they're already losing. They're down 4-1 with 8 minutes left. I mean, the game was essentially over at that point. And then this team when it's almost like they have this underdog mentality. They do. I mean, they've talked a little bit, but like they don't feel like there's much to lose for them, right? Like the pressure is on Edmonton, and they don't feel that pressure right now. I don't know if that's because there's no fans in here or it just internally, nobody. But like everybody wrote this team off except Kenny, who picked them and whatever. But that was. I don't know.
Well, he picked them in 7, right? Like no one here was picking them to potentially be in a position.
And that's what I think. But I don't think like anybody really gave the Jets a lot of chance here, right? And the Jets are playing it's a different game that they get to play at that point, right? In 2017, 2018, this team was a good team. They won 52 games, right? The pressure's on them at that point. The year later, I mean, the pressure was on them to try and figure out how to flip the switch when they completely nosedived in the second half of the season, and they sort of did that this year, but they're without Ehlers. Like I think the depth of this team has also shown a little bit better too, because they won 2 games. Well, I guess Dubois played in the second game, but they won 2 games without Ehlers, and then Ehlers comes back in. It's almost like they're adding strengths to their team as they go here, and it's kind of paying off for them. So. I'm not sure what new they've shown. Like we know this is a team that can get down, that they can do that they can also come back and play 3 minutes of hockey and turn the complexion of a game around. But I think it's in game 1 and game 2, I think they showed that they can adapt a certain style of hockey, and I think that helped them in those 2 games to get the win. And then tonight it was just like let's like Jeff said, you kind of like throw it all kind of to the wind and do what what you're good at, and they came and they figured out they manufactured 3 goals in 2 minutes and 3 seconds. It was, or 3 minutes and 3 seconds. It was it was fun to watch.
Ken, that idea that Scott talks about the team adapting, I agree with that. In what ways do you think that the Jets have adapted in this series, and what confidence have they built up in themselves over that process?
Sure, Sean. I mean, we debated, the value of muscle memory, down the stretch, and I kind of countered to say that you can't just throw away the first 40 games when the Jets were resilient, like now that we've seen them in the playoffs, and they are leaning on those things. That's not to say they didn't have warts during the losing streak. Those warts were obvious, but they have made the necessary changes. And while they were able to put up 5, Scotty, I don't think the Jets went into a run-and-gun game. They stuck to their kind of core values, and they didn't kind of stray from the structure during that third period. Got pucks to the net, as simple as that sounds. 1 rebound for Wheeler, and then you get traffic in front on a knuckle puck that Morrissey scores on. They didn't open up their game, I don't think. I mean, they used their speed to generate some offense in the offensive zone.
I think that maybe that's what I meant. Like, there was more speed in their game,
sure.
Right? they weren't just sitting back on the game as much as they were in the first two periods. But
They found a little bit of desperation. There's no doubt about that. And I think that, Josh Morrissey, those guys downplayed it. Sean, I think you mentioned that earlier on before I got on. But this mattered to them. Josh Morrissey face washed Josh Archibald almost right before the Wheeler got his goal, right? I mean, there was an exchange at the blue line.
10 shots. The Jets had like 10 shots halfway through the game, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, it wasn't. They changed. They changed when they were down by 3 goals. Like, it was,
but not at the risk. They didn't They didn't open themselves up to risk. I don't think, Jeff. That's what my point is.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Like, there weren't a lot of odd man rushes against. They raised their speed. And you talked about it already. Why?
That too tonight, right? Like, they can actually play at a more higher offensive level and still not sacrifice too much defensively. And maybe they learned a little bit of that tonight too. So, well,
it's not a coincidence that Ehlers came back and that raised. I mean, he only had 3 minutes in the first period, but I think several of those they needed some time to get him into the game, and I thought he was effective from the beginning, but I guess they didn't want to tax him, but his minutes rate went up as the game went on.
Well, there was power plays, right? Like,
for sure.
He doesn't kill penalties.
Oh, and Kenny, to be clear, like, I was not saying that you're right. You're 100% right. They didn't cheat the game. They didn't go into a situation where they were now running and gunning. It was all offense. They were actually winning their puck battles. That desperation was turning into winning puck battles and doing things knowing that they couldn't afford not to. Like, for the first half of the game, I think that was the most, for me, noticing through the first 30 minutes was the Jets never really had a hold of the puck, particularly in their own end. It was just chaos. And if Edmonton wasn't controlling the puck, it was the Jets, frantically trying to get rid of it with no actual, again, winning any puck battles. So at that desperation, I think, turned into not a run and gun game, turned to offense. It was a desperation needing to come back in this game and therefore doing the right things that they just hadn't been doing as well through the first half of that game.
For sure. They were caught flat-footed a lot early on. They were chasing a lot. They were not generating. They did not have any zone time. I think their first 4 shots were taken by Tucker Poolman and Derek Forbort. It seemed as though they had a lot of trouble getting up to speed on all 4 of their lines, I think. And as you mentioned, I mean, some of that was the desperation of the Oilers, but the Jets had to find another level, and they did so before it was too late.
I think it was indicative, too, of the game. Like, sorry, Sean. Just like Connor Hellebuyck, too, I think early on was a little shaky. I think you and I, Kenny, agreed on that. And he wasn't tracking the puck as well as he normally did. And if the confidence really goes through Connor Hellebuyck, I sometimes I wonder how much that affects the team, too, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't use shaky just because on the Draisaitl goal, Sean, both you and I mean, he got a piece of it. Both you and I thought he stopped it. I thought it was in his glove instead of off the glove.
Whoa, because I thought that he'd gloved it and stopped it. Instead, it went in. It sounded like I was going, whoa, that they scored, but it looked like he had gloved it.
Yeah.
And it would have been
I saw the same thing, but do you think that Hellebuyck saw the puck or that he put his glove there? I don't think he knew where the puck was. I think his glove was in a good saving position. I also thought
the puck was going
he stopped
over there.
The puck until I saw the ref point it, but I'm not sure that he saw the puck, just knew that he had to react to it. He looked screened, glove there, bottom of the glove, back of the net.
Well, he also got kind of tied up with more, like, Morrissey obviously got dinged up earlier on in that shift. He was not able to get off the ice, and then when he was trying to get over to Draisaitl, it looked, I don't know if there was actual contact, but it seemed as though it impeded his ability to get across. But
it's almost like Hellebuyck kind of got in
right,
the way.
Yes, he was trying to challenge, yes.
Yeah.
But incredible job by Morrissey. I mean, again, I'm not blaming him for that play. Obviously, if he hadn't been hurt, he would have been covering his man there. But his ability to elevate his game down the stretch and into the playoffs is a big reason why the Jets are in this position. I don't think there's any argument about that.
No.
I want to get back to that point that we were talking about before about adapting, because I think it's an important one for this team. Just in the idea that, you were talking about the muscle memory, Ken, and I think one of the things that had existed in this team was maybe the question mark in their own heads about their ability to generate offense, because that had disappeared, if you remember, down the stretch in the regular season. They had a couple games where they broke out there, but one was, I think, 4-0 against the Calgary Flames, who were a no-show. Another was 5-0 against or 5-1 or whatever it was against the Vancouver Canucks in back-to-back games. what I think about this team is they've been kind of tested in different ways by this Edmonton Oilers team. That first game against the Oilers, they go down 1-0. They're kind of getting ground down. The Oilers are kind of taking everything in that game. It's going in their direction. Then Tucker Poolman gets that game and kind of halts it in its track, and they build from that. And they show that they can win a game with depth. They show that they can turn a game around, come back in a game, and they show that they can kind of halt the momentum that they're building. And then in that next game, they show that they can just stick in through like a grinded out game, going through it. Tonight, I think, was important for two massive reasons, because the things that weren't going in this game before this game were the fact that they could score their way back into a game, which they hadn't done for a really long time going back into the regular season. And that their power play got going, because their power play before this and head down the stretch hadn't been very good as well. And tonight, that secondary power play unit looked absolutely lethal. They looked in control at all times. They looked dangerous at all times. And I just wonder about, we're talking about adapting. I think there's another word for it. I think they're building. I think they've built on their game. I think after this game here tonight, they're better positioned. Never mind for whatever happens in this series, but they're better positioned for whatever they run into in the next round, having played this game, because I think there's going to be more faith in the ability to score. Hey, they won the first game basically on goals by Tucker Poolman and Dominic Toninato, and Paul Maurice talked about it earlier before the game, said, goals by guys like Mark Scheifele, they start to lose importance. It doesn't matter who scores, but I don't agree with that. I think it does matter. You've got to feel that you've got confidence in certain guys that they're going to be able to show up at the right time. And you walk away from this game, and I think you think right off the bat, you've got confidence. You heard it from Blake Wheeler. You've got confidence that Nick Ehlers is going to show up and have the potential to be a game maker. You've got confidence that a guy like that is going to show up when you need to score back and your way back into a game. And you've got this feeling on your bench that if you do get a power play chance in a situation like that, you've got the swagger that second line has, and now you're just waiting for the first line power play to start catching up in that. Jeff, you look like you want to add to that.
I do. I just want to add to your great point. Not only did you come back in the game, you proved that you could come back in the game. You saw Leon Draisaitl and McDavid connect for the first 3 goals of that game, and still came back. Like, what happened, what didn't happen, what you prevented through the first 2 games, and what then happened tonight was a whole different mental test, if you will. So yes, Zach Kassian scores that 3rd goal for them, but it's assisted by Draisaitl and McDavid. You know that they're hot, they're running, so you also know that if they get hot, they actually can get cold too, because we just watched it. And you watch you come back. So there's all these mental games that play into it that I just think at the end of the day, 100%. And that's not, and that's just the little storylines within the larger storyline of knowing that you can come back from a 4-1 deficit because you've done it already after, what I'm sure has been some pretty challenging times against the Edmonton Oilers, having lost 6 straight before getting into this series. I feel like that kind of concerns over.
Exactly. And I think that's maybe the biggest thing that Jeff says right there, is that this team now just has the confidence that they can beat Edmonton again, right? You lose 6 straight coming into it. You have a bad, the whole talk about coming to the series is how are you going to shut down Connor McDavid? How are you going to, deal with Leon Draisaitl if you can do that? How are you going to beat Mike Smith? Because they weren't able to do that a whole lot. Like, I think the Jets have found, they have a recipe now, right? They have the confidence back, like Jeff said, to beat Edmonton. And I think that's huge, because this team could beat every other team. They played pretty evenly against Toronto. Like, I'm not saying the games within the games were even at times, but they at least knew that they could actually come back against Toronto or whatever. But they weren't able to do that against Edmonton in those last 6 games. And now they've figured it out in the playoffs when it matters the most. And they're doing that, and I think that that's maybe the biggest thing to take away from these first 3 games, or even the first 2 or the first 1, is that they figured it out at that point.
Kenny, I wanted your point on this about Kenny's water bottle says, how about 29 and 97 putting up points and it wasn't enough? We touched on this in our hit for Sportsnet afterwards, just the idea that, the Jets had played this series in games 1 and 2 based on the idea that they were better off shutting them down and had a better chance of winning that game, but that tonight these two broke out and they just went out and won it anyway.
Yeah, I think that certainly was part of it. We talked about this upstairs. I actually thought that the players injected by Dave Tippett actually had more of an impact than some of the Oilers that are not producing. I thought there was good speed shown by Gaetan Haas. He was very involved. Tyler Ennis had a few good shifts, and I thought Devon Shore was pretty good for them, but that wasn't enough. I'm not seeing enough from Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
No.
He's had a rough series for me, and he's a guy that they have to count on. And I think it's certainly demoralizing for the Oilers that they did unleash the weaponry and the nuclear option, and it still wasn't enough. But at the same time, those guys have the ability to take over a game, so of course they're going to look dejected after losing a game like that. But that's not to say that McDavid and Draisaitl are going to check out after being down 3-0. Those guys, the way they're wired, are, you know what they want to be talking about instead of being swept? Well, guess what? Win one. Now those two guys want to be the guys who say, we want to be the fifth team to come back from 3-0. So yeah. I wouldn't say it's cause for celebration, but I would say that the Jets have to feel good about the fact that even on a night where those guys did break loose because they were due to break loose, they still found a way to get the job done. And just back to the previous question, guys, I want to just add one quick thing. I know we talked about that lack of identity down the stretch and during the losing streak, but this isn't just a flip of the switch that happened on game one of the playoffs. As much as maybe we didn't want to acknowledge it at the time, or some of us, and I don't mean us in this box, I mean fans and other people, the Jets did make the necessary, they were in the process of making those changes. When Paul Stastny made the declaration about having to be more honest with themselves, taking the cheat out of their game, it didn't happen overnight and it didn't translate into results overnight, but it was a work in progress. This isn't something that happened in game one. This happened in those last 10 games of the year, and I know there was some frustration that even though they thought they were starting to play the right way, that the results did not always follow until winning 3 of the last 5 and obviously taking advantage of some teams feeling some tough circumstances. But the changes were underway. They were, especially on the offensive side, where they were smarter about how they were going about their business. They started to commit a little bit more defensively. The commitment in the playoffs is at a higher level than it had been, but they were already taking those steps leading into this playoff series. So I don't buy the rope-a-dope. I don't buy the flipping of the switch. They've elevated past the level they were playing at in the regular season, but the work was in progress before reaching the playoffs.
Let Jeff go. Just let him go. He's got, I can see it.
Go for it, Jeff.
Oh, Kenny, I mean, I get what you're saying. I think some of those habits were, so I guess some of the bad habits were getting fixed and trimmed.
I'm saying chipping away. I'm not saying giving up overnight. Chipped away.
The last 10 games of this season, majority of which were losses against some of which were bad teams, was getting to this point where you were building off a 1-0 victory in game 2 and a game 1 where Tucker Poolman was scoring the goal and Toninato, who was inserted into the lineup, was getting the other goal. This was not building toward. This, to me, was Connor Hellebuyck stealing the first 2 games and the Jets going back to their vintage desperation offense where they didn't cheat, but they hammered down in that third game, and they're doing everything. I'm not saying it's a flip the switch situation, but I'm not buying into good habits. I think attitude. I think this is a chip on the shoulder. I think this is a certain point where they hit rock bottom somewhere in here and realize whether it was
6-1 they hit rock bottom
for sure.
Yeah.
And then talked about it. I don't know if I'm buying into this whole chipping away at this solid game that's now gotten us to these 3 victories in the first series. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying
maybe
I'm
not
right.
10 games. I'm saying that in the last 5 games they were taking steps. I didn't say, and it certainly did not look like this, but they were starting to chip away at the bad habits.
Yeah, and I'll say
the good players are still getting the most minutes, and the first 2 games stolen by Connor Hellebuyck in game 2. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And game 1 were some unsung heroes and some emotion in game 1. Now, I'm not saying that it didn't play into it. I'm not buying it. I don't know.
I'm saying, sorry, Scott, one thing. I'm talking about structure, and the top line did not light it up offensively, but they've got the toughest matchup in the NHL. So even or better, which is what they were in the first 2 games, is a smashing success when you're going up against McDavid and Draisaitl.
That's not the debate. I'm not saying that limiting those 2 guys isn't a smashing success. I'm saying they weren't building to a game that we've seen in the playoffs from the last 10 games of the regular season. I'm not buying that for 1 second. Habits or not habits. I'm just not.
So my thought on this, and I said it on the other show, was that I don't know. I mean, Jeff, you probably don't watch a lot of F1, but the F1.
Helly didn't steal the second game. He got a shutout. So did he?
Oh no, he stole that game for sure. The second game for sure he stole. 100%.
I don't get engaged by the comments. I don't get triggered by the comments. But you're saying that Connor Hellebuyck didn't steal a 1-0
triggered
game in the game too? Then I don't know. Like
I think it's kind of halfway between both of your points, right? Like
I agree with Scott.
I think
follow
that
up on it. Make your point.
I think that the Jets' overall game hasn't changed a whole lot. They get beat possession-wise, expected goals, all that stuff. Like all the metrics don't favor them, so I think that's still there. But I do think that somehow they got. I think Paul Maurice did enough to get the buy-in from his top line to make a difference in those 2 first games, because I think the confidence going into this series wasn't going to be high from the Jets. I think they had to buckle down defensively. I'm not saying they did in the best way possible, but they did enough to limit McDavid's chances in those first games. Like, was it 2 shots in the first game?
2 shots in the first game.
Yeah.
7 in the second.
So I'm not saying that Paul Maurice just changed the world here on this team. This team, if you look at all the analytics, it's the exact same team as they had before. And to Jeff's point, they rode Connor Hellebuyck in 2 games.
How come you aren't putting up all the comments, Sean, that are agreeing with me? I see all the ones that are agreeing with Kane. Those are the ones that are agreeing with me. I see a bunch here that are Jeff. You're the man. Like that.
I do it while you're talking.
I'm now engaging with the group. My people here, and I saw one. I remember seeing one comment like, "Disagree, Jeff. Kenny's on top," and I'm going through it here. I'm like wondering, okay, look at the ratio here. Yeah, just getting the people in.
Anyways.
Hang on. Jeff likes it better being in the chat room than being on the show. It sounds like.
I love the chat. I actually love being in the chat. Or I don't have to talk. I agree, Jeff. Yeah.
Oh wait, here comes
let me comment. Let me comment on my own.
Incredible.
Let me comment on my own, and then it can be like, "You got it, Jeff." From Jeff Hamilton. Perfect.
Here comes the Jeff Hamilton burner account. That's the next YouTube creation. Jeff Hamilton burner account. Get it ready. Get it ready.
I wanted to build on Scott's point. I do think it's halfway in between there. I think both Kenny and Jeff are right in this, and that I do agree with Ken that the Jets started working towards a game that would be successful in the playoffs. But it still was one that didn't look that amazing in a bunch of games that didn't matter against a bunch of teams that didn't look to be going anywhere in the playoffs. So I had doubts. It's the reason why I didn't pick the Jets to win this series. I had doubts about their ability to execute that. But
Sean, not to interrupt, but the fixes that were mentioned throughout that process were guys not talking about individual goals. How many times was it mentioned where guys were not talking about scoring points? That ain't system. That's attitude. So it wasn't playing a better 100%. Game. It was getting back on track and not worrying about how many points you're finishing at the end of the season, and therefore doing things like fundamental differences, like not changing when the puck was getting dumped into your own end, as we saw far too often from the top line. And so guys in deeper in the lines they were chasing the game. All the corrections were attitude. It wasn't building to a game. It was stop getting in your own way.
Right. So hold on a second.
That was the equivalent of it. That was a silent wake up right there. That was a silent wake up by Jeff Hamilton. We need a GIF of that.
Let's get the liquor beaver back up. It's finally
here we go. Let's get this in. I agree with you, Jeff, and I think you're right. And I thought it was very concerning at the time when that was what they were saying they needed to do. Like the guys needed to be caring about the team ahead of caring about their own points. But I think what you're talking about, and I agree with you, it's attitude. And I think the attitude was wrong, but I think the attitude gets expressed in things like cheating the puck and being on the wrong side of the puck and trying to get down ice faster than you're trying to get back. I agree with that, but there's a system, right? The system says you need to be here at this moment. This is where you should be. If you're not, the attitude is wrong. So I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I agree. Now I'm going to get totally frazzled by this. Yeah. I agree with you 100% there.
My ego is super high now. I'm reading the comments now. They're filling me up. They're getting me raised. They know I'm going to go on a rant eventually, so they're firing me up.
Yeah. The Mennonite Mafia.
I'll back off then. Holy white flag. I realized what I was getting involved in. I apologize. Whatever I said, I retract.
I still agree that it's in between, because I think correcting that attitude, getting the X's and O's right, being in the right spot, having an attitude where you're focused more on team success than going in the other direction is something that they are working on towards the end. But I do think, and people call it flipping a switch or whatever, I do think the Jets have an uncanny ability to elevate their game at playoff time. I talked about how they went from being a really bad team through the second half of 2019 and ending up giving the St. Louis Blues a really, really good run. I thought they did the same thing. They elevated their game. They didn't necessarily have the X's and O's right down the stretch, but they elevated their game. And I think what we've seen here is, to Ken's point, them working on their game, rounding it into form, and then once the playoffs hit, the gun firing and this team really pushing at the time it needed to. It's what we saw here tonight when they were down 4-1. How motivated did that top line look, and Blake Wheeler's goal, how motivated did they look at that moment in the game compared to how they looked for the rest of the game before that, and then to come out and score, 16 seconds later? How motivated did they look? They've got an ability to elevate it. Call it flip the switch. Flipping the switch doesn't work if you're just playing really good and not playing the right game. So I think Ken's right in that it had to come together in proper X's and O's, proper execution. But I do think that there's a flip switching going on here and an ability to elevate that we've seen from this team. That should be.
Full on. You want to comment?
He's just basking in the glory of the chat here.
Oh no, you're paying way too much attention to that. I'm ready to go, Sean. You got a question? I'm ready to go.
Do you want a counter to that, or
counter to what?
Sorry, and I also think that the commitment is also part of attitude, Jeff. I'm on your side. That attitude is a big part of it, but the big issue for the Jets was commitment to team defense, and I think that that's part of it. I don't think that they've
from the top line, especially from the top line, right? Like that's what they got.
My other point is that Blake Wheeler didn't just show up here. He played well down the stretch once he got healthy. I think points in 8 of 9 or 9 of 10 to finish the year, and he's continuing to drive the bus even though, the offense hasn't been pouring in at 5-on-5. He's playing his best hockey of the season at the time when it matters most.
Completely agree with the Blake Wheeler comment too. That goal that Blake Wheeler scored, he started that play and he finished that play. And to me, that is what you need from Blake Wheeler. As Scotty mentioned earlier in the conversation, it's Blake Wheeler that's driving that line.
He is, yes.
And that is both good in the sense that Blake Wheeler is driving the line, and bad in the sense that Scheifele isn't taking over that line and being, that secondary driver. My comment still stands. There's a lot of skilled players on the offensive side, but there's far too many passengers. There's not enough drivers in it, and there's some really, really good passengers. Kyle Connor's a great passenger. But there's not a lot of drivers in the conversation that. Wait, I'll be real still. Can you get the face?
He's got it. Guys, we should get close to. We got security waiting on us, so let's get close to shut this down.
So that's all I'm saying is that's it.
I want everyone to weigh in on this one before we go. Where does this game end up ranking in Jets lore as far as greatest comebacks of all time or greatest playoff moments of all time?
I'll start. I think it's below the Nashville one, and only because nobody was here to see it. I think that's what this moment was kind of stolen from people tonight. Oh my goodness! Look, he buys his own hammer. Come on.
There's a Thor's hammer. Got it from a garage sale. Someone said Thor's hammer, so I threw it out there. I have it hanging.
Hammer's hammer.
In case I have any doubt. If I have any doubt in the future, It
is hammer time. Exactly. That's got to be your new. There's got to be another creation there too. Kenny's water bottle. Jeff's hammer time.
Yeah.
Greg the Hammer Valentine. There you go.
Yeah, just to answer your question, Jeff, I think it's second only because the Nashville game. First of all, it's in a different round. It's weird, right? Because this one happens at a better time in the game. Like it happens in the third period. It's completely different. But I think it happened. Yeah, I would think the Nashville game. Maybe it's because there was fans in it. I think if fans were in the building tonight, it would have been louder than when Trouba scored that. When Morrissey scores that goal to tie it, I think it might have been louder than when Trouba scores that goal.
It just happened so fast.
Maybe, but
the audience wouldn't have calmed down from the first one. So you're right. It would have been insanity building on top of insanity.
Right. Like it's hard, right? Because like this game, I think that game against Nashville probably did more for the franchise than this one might. But who knows, right? Like this one, it put the Jets the Jets are on brink of history right now, right? Like they've never swept a series. You know, I mean, you can go back to the WHA days and counter with that, but yeah, I don't know. It's a great question. I think you can debate it on both sides. I just think the Nashville goal or the Nashville game was, I think people got to see it, and I think that's kind of something that just isn't here. But I don't know. Go ahead, Jeff.
The third game of a first series will never be memorable, whether it's an overtime comeback or 4-1 comeback. You got to get into the deeper series for them to be memorable. Where does this stack up? I don't know. Who cares? Game 3, we got Game 4 tomorrow. Sweep them up. We won't even be talking about Game 3 ever again. Is it not true?
I disagree. True? No, it is not. No, I disagree because the game against.
Oh man, you cherish games in the first series.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's you said. You said Game 3. I hope you didn't mean just. I think if you mean Game 3 of the first round, no problem. But Game 3 was the Nashville series that we're talking about.
Oh, we're not talking about Game 3s in general. Just kidding. We're talking about.
Well, they only have one.
And I also this game will not be memorable. It's a first
I disagree.
Round. Yeah, okay.
Because if the Jets lose this game, they could have easily lost the series. So by taking the commanding 3-0 lead, we could easily remember this if the Jets happen to go on a run similar to 2018.
Win the Stanley Cup, we'll see how much ink you leave for this Game 3 overtime win. See how much when they win the Stanley Cup this year. We'll see how much ink is spilled for Game 3. Of series 1. That's all.
Let me finish. I'm not suggesting this is their best comeback of all time for 1 second. I think it was an impressive comeback, and what makes it more impressive in terms of the historical films that Connor Hellebuck likes to reference is who the game is coming against when you're looking at the heartache of Jets 1.0 in what happened against the Oilers so many times previously, and the fact they did it against the two of the best players in the NHL on a night when those guys went off for 6 points. So I'm not here to say this is a magical moment that there will be books written about, but it can be an important moment on a run the team gets on. Team like Chicago, I think of sometimes when there are those pushbacks in the first round, it can lead and help the snowball get moving. But I'm not here to say I'm going to be writing a 1,000-word opus about this comeback if the Jets go on a run. But it was an impressive comeback, but let's leave it there. Again, I think we're sort of in the middle of what we're talking about. I think you can't deny the significance or importance, but it's not going to be something that means the Jets did this, so X, so Y. This is what's going to happen. They're automatically going to go on this crazy run. This is Game 3 of however many the Jets win. Scott, you talked about 2018. That run was impressive, but guess what? They got 9 out of 16, right?
Never. Yeah,
that's what they got in terms of wins. That's one step past the halfway point.
But that's not the question that Sean
No, I know that. I'm
right?
just saying. I'm reiterating how hard it is to win. The Game 3 against Nashville is the loudest the building has ever been.
Yeah.
And that rally was impressive because it looked like it was going south in a hurry. And the other parallel that I will draw, I think that the Josh Morrissey celly, it wasn't quite Bufflin-esque in terms of the dance, but it was pretty close in terms of the ferocity of the celebration. You don't see Josh Morrissey get emotional like that very often, but he did tonight.
I think Jeff makes a really good point in that he says, hey, if this goes to the Stanley Cup final, are we going to be remembering this game? I think he's entirely right with that. Here's the problem. The Jets have never gone to the Stanley Cup final before, right? So what do? We sit in here, we cover this job, and then we watch in the intermission periods when they go over these things, like that everyone's bringing up the Nashville game, right? Some people are bringing up Nashville Game 7. Some people are bringing back the miracle comeback against Nashville. Guess what, guys? That was the second round, and we're talking about it still, right? And we're talking about it because this team has never gone all the way. So there's going to be other teams that would come in here and they would see the tributes on the board to a Game 5 win in the second round of the 2018 playoffs, and they're going to say, aw, that's cute. That's their big moments, right? Because that's where this organization is. But that's the point, Jeff. You're saying that this isn't a big deal because it's in the first round. But it is a big deal.
It is a big deal. It is a big deal. It is.
This team hasn't really gone it hasn't gone all the way before. So it doesn't have that pedigree to say, it's not the Chicago Blackhawks saying, no, we pulled something out in Game 1 of the 2016 Stanley Cup Finals against the Tampa Bay Lightning, a game we never should have won, and we went on to win the Cup. It doesn't work that way because they've never been here before. I take a look at this and I think on the very base of it, comeback-wise, if you're judging just that specific comeback, I think this is a bigger comeback than it was against the Nashville Predators in that game because they had a lot of that game to work with. Their backs weren't as against the wall. Their backs were against the wall here tonight. I think it's a little bit bigger because there's a little bit of hate involved with how this starts. They get a cheap shot play by Archibald that kind of gets them fired up and gets them fired up in that moment. And then they come out and they roll over it. And then the other thing that makes this phenomenal and a step up from that game against the Nashville Predators is the fact that they win it in overtime. And that celebration, that instant release, like you're talking about that moment where, and Ken, you're right, I've never heard the building louder than when Dustin Byfuglien does the dance after scoring that goal and Trouba scores and does the double fist pump and the place just goes absolutely wild. Well, there was still a lot of hockey that was played after that, and they kind of, put Nashville in a sleeper hold, and it was a little bit of an anticlimactic ending. This was the ending. Yeah. The ending was Nikolai Ehlers pinging it off the post, skating down the ice, Connor Hellebuck leaving his crease, people losing their mind, having that celebration. The joy all happened right in that moment. So I say game-wise, that is it's the biggest comeback in playoff history for this team. It was a bigger moment, no doubt, against Nashville, but we're debating things that have happened in the first and second round. We're not debating someone scoring an OT winner in Game 7. So, Jeff, let's give you one last response to this.
I'm saying that would have sounded a heck of a lot better with the Titanic theme song behind it. To me, personally, I think it would have really brought the drama out.
Oh my God.
I think at the end of the day, a Game 3 at home comeback up 2-0 in a first round series, man. If this is your moment, I'll leave it at this. Let's look forward for the Jets creating some real moments for the fans here that really, really deserve it. And I'll tell you what, no one talks about the first round. I don't care if it was Game 3 comeback. I don't care if it was a Game 7 comeback. The first round is a gimme for teams that know they should win the Stanley Cup. So as much as I'm saying, it was a massive win today. It proved a lot to them. It turned the series on its head. The Jets, by all intents and purposes, look like they're going to be the team that moves on to the second round, including myself. Many of us thought that they weren't going to do it. They deserve all the credit in the world. I'm not looking at a 4-1 come-from-behind victory in Game 3 of a first-round series up 2-0 against an Edmonton team that doesn't even touch the Nashville Predators from 2018 as some kind of glory moment. So, again, I get it. I understand its importance today. In the grand scheme of things, we will never talk about this game again, in my opinion.
You don't think they'll ever talk about this game again? Oh no! Come on.
Can we talk about the Ryan?
Game three, Sean, in round one.
Come on, we're having a great show. We gotta let's not go off the rails here.
Well, we're not off the rails, are we?
You remember the Ryan Kessler moment in the dressing room? Can we talk about that at this point?
No,
do you remember what?
Again, it's in the back of my mind. We're not talking like that's what I'm saying. That's what it's kind of fueled off of. Is that no one remembers the first round?
Right. And
no one does.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
But
all right. I'm going to leave it at that.
Sorry, quick one. Some fans had asked about goaltending, Sean. There's no doubt that Connor Hellebuyck starts tomorrow, and there's also no doubt that Mike Smith starts. Unless all of a sudden, I don't think he's pulled. Do you guys? I mean, I don't. You think they're going to put Koskinen in 0-3 in this series? Not a chance.
Doubt it. No chance. By the way, I just want to clear up because my friends on the chat are now mad at me. So I don't. Now I'm riding the wave here. I'm not saying the Jets win was
doesn't want to go back.
I'm saying at the end of the day, this will not be an integral moment, even in this play. It'll be a moment in this playoff run, but if the Jets do something that they're capable of doing, it will not be something that we go back to and spend a ton of time over. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, what you're saying is if the Jets go on to win the Stanley Cup and do a whole bunch of bigger stuff than this won't be big anymore. I'm talking about right now.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, and I agree with you. I think it's big.
So clearly, if they go on and win the Stanley Cup, people are going to be like, they won the Stanley Cup. What do we care about that? You're right about that. But at this moment, this team's never come close to doing that.
Top two, Sean.
This will be, I'm telling you this right now, this will be Jets content that they put up. They will interview.
Okay, fine, I'm wrong. It was a great moment. It was a massive moment in Jets history. It's a massive moment. You know what? I'm taking it back. You know what? I'm taking it back. Why am I ruining the parade here? Why am I the decision maker on the importance of this night? I think this night was massive. I think this night was wicked for them. And you're right. Just turn it on. They're gonna win this series. Hopefully for the fans here, they deserve it. What a win tonight. It was a great win. There's no point in me saying this isn't going to be significant because tonight's win was a massive win any way you look at it. Grinder scheme, whatever, regardless. So I'm gonna take it back and say what a win. Best moment in the Jets history.
This is Jeff Pallister here flip-flopping around.
All right,
let's get moving here.
Okay. All right, let's get off here. We got to get out of here. Thanks for joining us, guys. Scotty and Jeff, we appreciate that. And we appreciate everyone sticking around. Did we hit 700? I think we hit
688. I saw. I'm not. Maybe.
I think before you came in.
Okay,
once again, Ken, the audience.
Ratings dropper. Okay. Well, hey, I'll keep that in mind. I'm like Nikolai Ehlers. I'm just, I have high expectations for myself, and when I come into the lineup, I just want to stay in the league. You know what? We've been talking about the star power, trying to stay on the marquee. I'm going to do my best to survive these playoffs with my name still involved in the show. That's my goal right now.
Yes. Okay. Kenny, keeping it in perspective as usual. Everyone, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate that. We'll be right back on tomorrow. And boy, oh boy, that's going to be like a 2 a.m. show or something like that, the way that it's going, especially if it goes to overtime or something like that.
Boys, thanks for joining us, Scott and Jeff.
Tell them to subscribe and smash the like button and tell them to subscribe.
Yeah, if you're here, smash the like button, subscribe.
Watch the Friday show.
See us tomorrow morning, or it's not tomorrow morning. See us 45 minutes before the game as we do our Instagram setup, and then we'll be right here after the game. We'll try and get you the time that we're hopping on as quickly as possible. But geez, thank you so much for joining us here tonight, everyone. A ton of fans checking it out. I'm glad you got to see that win tonight. It's going to be exciting. Maybe we'll be talking about the second round here by the time we take care of this show tomorrow night. That would be something. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.